Fire Radio.
Hey everybody, it's Jeremy, National Fire Radio. Welcome back to the podcast. I am pumped, man. Over the next few weeks, I got a lot of great episodes lined up, and today we're starting off with Tony Bratcher, the Kitchen Table Podcast. First and foremost, brother, or should I say chief, newly promoted chief, I want to say this. This lid on my head is a one of one. There will never be another one made. And this was your baby, man. Support your local fire podcast. I saw it at FDIC. We shook hands. We laughed about it. I said, man, I love that. How do I get one of those? And you said, I'll take care of it. And you did, man. A week later, it came in the mail. And it's awesome. And hold on, I'm going to take my headphones off for a minute because I want to show it. Hang on one sec.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is it, man. Support your local fire podcast. Beautiful Halligan bar through. But here's the kicker right here, bro. I love that.
Yeah.
The NFR on the side. Come on, are you kidding
National
me?
Fire Radio, absolutely.
Are you kidding me? Like, how freaking sweet is that?
Yeah, well, and you know, my brothers, they own Axe Head Threads.
Yeah.
My previous battalion chief, my best friends, guys, they started the business. I've been with them since the beginning. They had the idea to do support your local truck, engine, and all that.
Yes.
And I said, we're on Firefighter Row, a couple guys out of the podcast. We need to throw these out. And not with the intention to sell it, just because, like I told you, like it's all about supporting other ones. Like
what? Yes, man. Somebody shared with me the other day, and I loved it. I reposted it. I thought it was a great saying. It was like, you know, collaboration is when you're confident in what you're doing, and it's not competition.
Absolutely.
And I've been saying that for, you know, I got to think that probably National Fire Radio, we've been around for 6 years now. I think that we were probably one of the I don't know, first shows out of the gate, if you will.
Oh, for sure. You're an OG.
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean, you know, I do know that, you know, we're, you know, probably 500 episodes in. I mean, I know the podcast only says like 300 and something per episode, but we weren't counting the first one. So the first couple of years, we didn't even put a number to them. So, I mean, I know we got over 500-600 episodes in the pipe, and it's a learning process, man. But I have to ask you to support your local fire podcast. What does that mean to you? Like, that saying, because I know what it means to me, and I want to share that with you, but I want to hear what that means from you. You're the one that came up with the saying or the hat. What does it mean to you? What has it done for you?
Yeah, so everyone has got to a point where there's a lot of fire podcasts out there. And the important thing to me is that we don't have allegiance to just one.
That's right.
Because if we're just listening to one, we're missing out on another thing. I've always said, my brothers in Jersey will tell you this, Ridgeway Leather, all of them, like some of the best firemen I've ever met in my life come out of Jersey.
We'll take it.
My idea with it was, I always said, I'm not going to be a part of a podcast if I can't have my friends on and guests that I want to learn from.
That's right.
You know, so support your local podcast was more than just trying to sell a hat. It was, listen, you need to listen to Get Salty. Like if you're building a new truck, I send people to National Fire Radio all the time because the innovation's there.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many good podcasts out there, and each one has a niche. So if you're just listening to mine, we focus more on leadership because when I first got promoted, I had this burning desire to learn how to lead. And that's the direction we wanted to go with ours. But you got Tip of the Spear. All of their stuff is leadership based. So, you know, you're going to hear different perspectives as long as you're willing to broaden your horizons. So support your local fire podcast. My guests are mainly from Indiana. They're a lot of them are friends of mine, connections of the other two guys. But I can't just learn from Indiana people.
Where did your passion for podcasts come from, though, right? Because here's the thing. Like, I found it because I was running a family business. It was entrepreneurial. I don't read a lot because I just don't have the time, and frankly, I get bored when I sit down with print in front of me. So I found I spent a lot of windshield time in my car, and so I started doing books on audio, and then I found podcasts, and I was like, man, this is it. Like, podcasts for me, I was all in, and in fact, podcasting helped me build my family business, and that's what parlayed into National Fire Radio. And so, like, that was important for me. Where was your need for podcasts? Like, where did that come into your life? And were you seeking it? Were you looking for it? Did you need direction or guidance or mentorship? Like, what does it look like?
Not at all, really.
Okay, cool.
I've always been full of shit, and I've always kind of been able to talk to about anybody. When I first got on the fire department, the guys, I was given the name CNN because they're like, you're always on, you never shut up. So I knew that I had a desire to learn more. I was getting a little too old to listen to the rap music I grew up on listening to, so I needed to transition. Talk radio is boring. My passion is the fire service, so podcasting was the next step for me. Finding podcasts to grow as a firefighter, and then when I got promoted, to grow as an officer. And then I was like, you know what? I really have a passion for the traditions of the fire service, the history aspect.
Yeah.
I teach the history classes here to our new recruits. And I wanted to bring some of that in, mainly, the Indianapolis history and the area of Indianapolis firefighters.
I love that. I'm actually writing it down. History classes for the recruits. We need so much of that. And that's really interesting to me because I don't know how you outgrew rap music. I mean, we'll start there, but
I still listen to it, but if I listen to it too loud, these young kids pull up next to me and they see the gray hair and they're like, what the hell?
I love that. Come on, man. That's awesome. Talk about OG, right? I love that. Yeah. But I mean, I think what's really interesting though is that what podcasts do. And anybody that's seeking information or knowledge or some wisdom or some guidance or mentorship. Like I know, and you got to know this too from doing your podcast now and traveling and, meeting guys all over, right? Especially like at FDIC. There are so many people starving for information. And so this is where I think podcasts really fit such an incredible gap that's in the fire service, because not everybody comes from great firehouses. Not everybody has a history class in their recruit class about the traditions and culture of their fire department. And so they're seeking it. And now more than ever, there's opportunity to find it. And that's why I love these podcasts that are popping up and guys that are putting in the time to do it.
Yeah. And, I'm a newly promoted battalion chief, so I have a lot of younger guys working for me. And I grew up, I had great, fantastic mentors, but I also had the guys that would be like, we've always done it this way. This is the way we're going to do it. Well, This younger generation, they want to know why. So if we're going to carry on these traditions and everything we hold near and dear, we kind of have an obligation to explain why. Like these new guys get on, and they're like, I ran 8 calls yesterday, but why are they called runs? Why are they called calls? When I got on, he was like, you did 5 runs today. You were busy. Well, where'd we get run from? And, so we had to teach them, rather than say, hey, the engine, we're on a plug. Most of the time, none of them even knew what that was about.
Right.
So how can we explain what is near and dear to us unless we explain the traditions? Not just this is why we do it, but this is why we do it, and this is how we do it, and this is the way it started, and this is how it evolved.
Takes work.
Yeah. This generation, they're all about the information. And they're the ones that are going to carry the fire service on when we're all gone. So if we don't teach them it, we can't just lean on tradition. We have to teach them why the traditions exist, and that was important to me.
Well, I agree, right? And that was a lot of like why I did what I did, and why I started what I started was because I felt that we were missing. There was a misfire, a miscommunication, a gap between the different generations, and we do have an obligation to push this job forward. We say it all the time. It becomes cliche. It becomes just something we say. But I truly believe that. Like, this fire service will be here when I leave. When I'm dead and gone, it's still going to be here. Yeah. My department's a volunteer department, and they're like, it doesn't matter. We'll just hire paid people when we need to. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. And it's going to happen, in the next 10 years. But they've been saying that for the last 30 years, right? And so it's like the job still progresses forward. And so we have to do our part, whether we like the environment, whether it's still the same old fire service that we fell in love with, which it's not. It is different, but it's always different. And generationally, it's always going to change. Are we willing to adapt and change with it? And that requires our older people to adapt and change a little bit. We have to find common ground to be able to mentor the next generation. And that takes work. It takes work.
Like you said, I've actually came across 2 things National Fire Radio has taught me in my short time listening. When we were building a new engine, you had a video where they had their supply line marked halfway, and then the section right before.
Yeah.
And we built our new engine, and I've always been an engine officer. I've always been an engine-minded officer. When we were doing that, we ordered sections of hose different color like that. So the impact of this is how we're getting this information out. The other thing that you kind of brought up, and actually I think you posted about it, your daughter just got on your fire department.
Yeah.
So you know how it goes. It's a family tradition. So if I'm going to leave this with the younger generation, one of which could be my son, I got an obligation. Now I'm more than just invested in the career. Like, now this is my blood. So,
and blood is good, but family is family, and we say that it's a brotherhood or the sisterhood, whatever, And the thing is, though, is that if you don't have your own child coming up in it, you should be looking at this next generation as your children, right? Like, you have an obligation. You're an uncle, a brother, a cousin, and we all have an obligation because the family is more important, right? The focus is shifted, though, brother. Chief, the focus is shifted to the individual and not the mission. And that is where I think we get in trouble. And I think that is a big part of the gap that we're dealing with today, is that we have put our heads down instead of walk with our heads up, and we have gotten to a place where it's more about the individual and less about the name on the truck or the department we're running with.
Oh, absolutely. I don't just say this because you're from Jersey. You can ask all the Jersey guys I've ever interacted with. I took one of the most impactful trips of my life. A group of firefighters used to go out to Jersey, and they had a Fireman's Day parade every year, and I was able to go on that one time, and we went to a place called Booton. I'm sure you know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the absolute pristine look of their truck, their firehouse, the guys were out there cleaning it, and they were like, I was like, oh, it's probably just for a parade, and they were like, no, this is our life. My grandpa built this truck. I'm on this truck. My kid's on this truck, and it was just like one of those things that was like, this passion for a profession. I get paid to do this job, but honestly, I'd do it for free. I have done it for free. So you pay me to be a battalion chief, but you kind of mentioned our kids, treating the people that are around us like family. Simon Sinek, he has a bunch of great leadership books. Like, you can't get enough of them, and they talk about this next generation. And they talk about, when you're a boss, you got to look at your employees like your kids. And, that has guided me from the moment I was a lieutenant to captain and now battalion chief. Like, it's my job to make sure that they become great firefighters. And it's our job to make sure our kids become great citizens.
How do you do that? Now, I know that's a huge blanket statement, right? I mean, there's so many moving parts. But, I think it comes from, first off, the mindset, though. Because, we as leaders, right, you're a battalion chief now. I mean, that is next level. That's not just a company. That's multiple companies, multiple stages, whatever your department is, right? But a battalion chief takes on a hell of a lot more responsibility. That fire ground is his, which has multiple companies operating, which have multiple bosses, which have multiple teams, all that stuff, right? So it's like you have to get yourself in that mindset every single day when you walk in the door. But I think it's deeper than that. I think it's a lifetime mindset, right? You have to be the same person in the firehouse that you are outside of the firehouse, right?
Yeah, and I when I first became battalion chief, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I have all the answers. In fact, I learn something new every single day
100%.
that I don't know. I have good other battalion chiefs that follow me, good mentors above me. My bosses are great. But at the end of the day, as long as your only goal is to make sure your firefighters are happy and healthy and their family is happy and healthy, you can't go wrong there. I made sure that all of the spouses, I had a get together when I first got on, a pizza party for all the kids. We did cookie decorating and all that. And I gave all the spouses my number and said, listen, I know I'm not going to butt into your personal life, because what's personal is personal. What's business is business. However, it's my job as their battalion chief and their leader to be involved in their personal life and know what's going on. Celebrate with them when it's good. Be there for them when it's bad. No different than you would a kid. So I'm in constant contact with all of my guys.
Well, it needs to be that way. And I think that's setting that tempo, setting that experience up front, that people know what they're getting into with you. I think that's really important, and that's a big part of why I think it's a lifestyle, and you just can't turn it on and off. It's either you're genuinely interested in your people, you genuinely care about them, whether you're in the firehouse or outside of the firehouse. You got to be dialed into your people, and then that comes through, right? Because then there's an expectation that the next kid in knows that what the tempo is, because the guys are telling them, like, this is the guy you want to work for. This is the guy that cares about you and your family.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to let these kids lead the other kids. You have to let the next generation lead. You have to set them up to be the mentor of the next one, like I was. So I may have direct contact with a probie just to tell him good morning and everything, but I got other guys in between me and him that are mentoring him, and they're reporting to me and going, man, he's doing great, or hey, we need to try this, or he has this going on, so like maybe let's take it easy on him. I don't want to coddle. Because I know you have to be, you're paramilitary and all of that. And you have to teach them the job, and this job is dangerous. But you also have to, this generation's a little different than the greatest generation and the next one and then my generation. So you have to adapt. Like you said, it's about me meeting halfway and you meeting halfway.
But you said something really interesting, which I love, right, is recognizing as you climb the ranks, you allow for your people to do their job. And I think that has become one of a really popular clip that went up recently on our channel was where Mike Greco was interviewed, and he talked about just let firemen be firemen. Like, they want to run, let them run. And it takes a confident leader. It takes somebody that's dialed in to allow for their people to do what they're supposed to do. We can't smother them.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell my company officers all the time, if the decisions you make are based around the mission statement and the citizens, you can't go wrong. Our mission statement, says we're going to take care of these people like they are our family. So, they call me and ask for permission for something. And I'm like, hey, bud, dude, make the decision, because at the end of the day, if your heart is pointed in the right direction, you're not going to make a wrong decision. So.
Well, I always say that, right? In my program, I say, if you're making a decision 100% based on the betterment of the department, of the mission, right, of the people that you serve, you'll never make the wrong decision. It's only when you insert yourself into the equation and you become self-serving will your decisions sometimes go askew, because you're not representing what the mission is. So if it's 100% mission focused 100% of the time, you're never going to make the wrong decision.
We have a lot of firefighters out there that couldn't tell you their department's core values and their mission statement. But if we did more of a job of teaching that instead of just putting it up in our buildings, teaching why it's this way, then that will create leaders that, if they read that mission statement and they memorize that and they know those core values, then everything they do in their career will revolve around that, which is good for the citizens and good for the other firefighters.
Oh, it always looks good on paper, right? Or hey, we're gonna print this on the wall. We're gonna put our mission statement up, and everybody walks past it every single day, and nobody reads it because they don't live it every day. Yeah,
I mean, you can go on Taylor Sten's website. I'll give him a little plug because he's one of the best brothers there is.
Sure.
You can go on his and get your mission statement printed on a tin, but if you don't take the time to explain what the mission statement is. We actually have our family in our mission statement. We're a small town department, but what that means to me is if a guy has a baseball game, as a battalion chief, it's my job to make sure he's at his kid's baseball game, even if it means he's got to ride with me to go there.
I love that. That's so cool.
I don't want these guys that are giving their all 24 hours a day to miss everything. Obviously, we're going to, and you know that. You've been on long enough, but. If it is a slight inconvenience, as long as it's for their family and for this department, that's an easy decision.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I love where it's, people focused, understanding that as much as I want to encourage and push you to be the best person you can be, and I'm going to support you through that, we still have this job to do, and this job takes precedent over that, right? I mean, there is drawing that line in the sand that they have to understand. Sometimes, sometimes that gets a little skewed, though. Sometimes it becomes, well, wait, I thought we were supposed to be taking care of us. And it's like, hold on, we got a job to do yet, though,
Well,
for sure.
The only way you take care of your family is this agency takes care of you. They owe you a paycheck. So they did their part. Now you got to do your part. And sometimes that takes that sacrifice.
Yeah, you mentioned tradition is important to you, right? And then I brought up, like, hey, you can put the mission statement on the wall. and people could walk past it. But if you're not living that mission statement every day, it's just window dressing, right? It's just decoration on the wall.
Absolutely.
It goes the same, and I haven't really explored this before, but I think I want to go down this road with you a little bit. Those photos that hang on the wall, the history that's hanging in the hallways and offices and so on. How important is it for us to talk about those photos and pass down the stories of the people in them, the fires they're at, the events they were a part of, to the next generation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's incredibly important. When so here we run lieutenants and house captains. So house captains means you're in charge of the house. One of the things that every house captain here has done is said, you know what, we're going to hang the photos. We're going to take the pictures. And, when we all first started getting together, our department was pretty young, but we looked like an office building. We never had anything hanging up. So we've taken these steps to hang these up so we can explain to the kids, this was this time. And even more important, when the old firefighters come back in and they're slower, they're struggling to remember, they can look at pictures and say, man, that was cool. Or, I tell my crew all the time, take the photo. Obviously, be respectful of the citizens. Don't take a photo in front of a car that's mangled, that someone just lost their life. But take the photos because they're going to be important to explaining this job, why we do this job. But they're also going to be something that you're going to look back on and be like, I was a part of something really cool.
I would agree. I think it's super important, and we have to take the time to educate through our experiences. And if we can document now more than ever through photography and everything else, why not display that pride on the walls? Why not show, boost each other up and let them hang a photo or enlarge a print? I just think it goes so far, but we have to follow it up with the storytelling behind it so that everybody that walks through that hallway. I love going to firehouses, Chief, across the country. When I walk in, I look at stuff on the walls, and I'm like, you can get a real sense of the department really quick by looking at the walls of the firehouse. And then I go to the guy, I'll find the youngest guy, and I'll be like, hey, man, who's this guy in the photo? Or who's the memorial for on the side of the apparatus, that you got a guy's name with his date of birth and his passing? Like, who's this guy? I want to know that story. And do the young kids, and even the older guys, do they know the story behind the foundation from which they came?
Yeah, so one of the things, not to keep bringing up the Jersey thing, but like I said, it was an impactful trip. We went out there, and they had all their past chiefs hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
And
it's a big thing out here, yeah.
Yeah, I'm from a paid organization, and we haven't always had chiefs that we liked, but
sure,
our current chief, he is really big into that idea of the past chief. So nothing we've done here is original. It's something that we took from somewhere else. And was like, we need to do that, because even if I didn't like the chief, he's still a chief, and I'm going to call him chief. If he walks back in this wall, he's still going to be respected as a past chief. So I love that idea, because you can explain why you don't like that guy. What did he do that you didn't do? And that gives you that, now you're telling these kids the background story. And if you do it the right way, you can say, we had a rough time, but he did this, this, and this that was really good too.
Yeah, I love, though, you just said the original thought. Like, that is what's available today now more than ever, is sharing how we all do it, right?
Yeah.
We're never going to have all the answers.
As well as I do, I'm blessed that I'm able to help write policy out here and influence policy. But as well as I do that there was one guy that sat down and wrote all these policies, and he sent it to a buddy who was on another department, and he edited it.
That's right.
And then he sent it to a buddy, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel on any of this stuff. Most of the time, someone's already did it, and I just got to edit it. Yeah, that's how we do. That's how we operate.
Why not? I mean, it just makes sense, right? We continually push this job forward by working with each other and building upon what came before us. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
You mentioned leadership before. You newly promoted back in October to a battalion chief, which gives you a whole nother level of responsibility and so on. But with the podcast too, you talked about leadership, and you said how important that is for you. Let's go down that road a little bit, because I'm really interested to kind of dive into like the psyche, like with the Kitchen Table podcast and what you decided to do. I mean, I love the quote, always on, never shut up, CNN.
Yeah,
I love that. It's hilarious, right? Yeah. Absolutely hilarious. So you recognized early on that like, this is who you are. You're inquisitive, right? And so on. Yeah. And so then you start the podcast. How long ago did you start the podcast? Or I'm sorry. Well, there was right? There's partners involved too, I should say.
Yeah. So a friend of mine I went to high school
Right.
with, we went to 1 and 2. He started it with another guy, a great friend of his, a good friend of mine, and that guy wanted to go a different direction. He didn't want, but Ryan's a fireman to his core.
That's right. Yeah.
And him and I have always shared that. So I came on last year, and he wanted to fire this thing back up, and I said, dude, I'm in. And Ryan has been so gracious, even though he started it. He said, for lack of a better term, he's like, you have a lot of, and you're gonna laugh at this. He mentioned you. He's like, you have a lot of Jeremy qualities. You're a good talker, and I struggle to think that you have better hair.
I'm wearing a hat today, though, pal. I work hard at it.
So I wanted to be a part of something, but podcasts have to be something we learn by. It's not something we just listen to.
100%.
Trump didn't start the whole people don't trust the news, but where do you get fire service news? So the podcasts are where that's at. Whether it's like getting salty or like I told you, everyone has a niche. Everyone's doing something different. So we're not necessarily piggybacking off each other, but I can take something that I heard on National Fire Radio and take my own spin on it and make it a leadership type thing. Because we don't do a good job in the fire service of once you get promoted, we don't train you to be that there's always fire training. There's always new nozzle techniques and new ladder techniques, but once you there's very few officer classes. A good friend of mine, Candace Ashby, she was on my podcast. She's a battalion chief here in Indianapolis. She said, they don't teach you how to be an officer. They don't teach you conflict resolution. They don't teach you any of that. So there has to be more classes to teach you how to be an officer.
So let's go down that road a little bit. Why don't we? What now more than ever? Like here's why. This is why I wanted to go down this road. I find today more than ever we're talking about leadership and culture over strategy and tactics. Strategy and tactics should be 90% of the conversation. Instead, it's 10% because leadership and culture has crept in to be what the big topics are for so many people. People are looking for leadership. They're looking for cultural values. They're trying to figure it out because typically where they come from, there's poor leaders and bad culture. Absolutely. And so people are starving for both of those things. But I'm a firm believer too, Chief, and I would love your feedback on this, that a lot of being a good leader comes from experience. You can read about it. You can listen to podcasts about it. You can be in the trenches, but the trenches are really what's going to teach you. But we can give you tools, but you have to go do it.
Yeah, and as well as I do, we have cities in the country that are urban firefighters. You have suburban, you have rural. So you have different people with different levels of experience. I would be gassing you up right now if I said I run 3 fires a day. I mean, it could be one a month. Right. Now it's my job because I don't do that many. I got to go outside. I got to learn from the Bobby Eckerts that do fires regularly. I have to learn from the guys that go to fires regularly so I can draw some level of experience. Now, that doesn't say that I don't have my own experiences. Sure. Every decision I make, I draw from something that I was a part of, something that someone told me, something that someone experienced. But you have an obligation, if you're not a busy fire company, to get out there and learn the strategy and tactics. If you're on an engine, I think it depends what level you're at. You're a firefighter, strategy and tactics need to be your focus 100% of the time. You're a fire officer on an engine or a truck, strategy and tactics. What's coming down the pipe? What's new? What techniques work? What don't? You get up into that battalion chief level, now you strategy and tactics are a part of yours, but now you have to go into the incident management. I want to be that firefighter that goes right through the front door, but as a battalion chief, I got to be the guy that takes a look at the whole structure, and if it's not sound, am I going to lose a fireman over pride, over aggression? So,
I agree with you. I agree. Fire Department Training Network, FDTN, they put a post up a while back, and I shared it because I loved it. And they put chiefs to work there in chief roles. And so when it comes to the fire ground, they're putting chiefs to the test. They're making sure that they're a part of the training equation. So many chiefs don't get out on the floor and train. So many chiefs don't put in, I hate the word reps, but they don't put in the reps. They don't get out to test themselves, right? To put themselves out there anymore. They get pretty comfortable where they are and in their position. And yet there's a lot that has to be done. And for you as a newer battalion chief, the process a lot of it is probably finding your own way, I would assume, because I know we don't do a good job in providing enough inside information and ability for you to learn to do your job.
Yeah, so I was blessed. My department sent me down to Battalion Chief Boot Camp down in Pensacola under Chief Ike. And, you know,
but again, that's an outside agency, right? It's an outside conference. So you had to ask to go, or your department recognized the importance of that. So that's beautiful. That's what I'm talking about. Go with it.
Yeah, I you know, and one thing that you are taught is, you know, my department did a good job teaching me how to do injury reports, how to manage the schedule, how to do all of that. But they are not able to teach us how to manage fire incidents. So now I have to go to someone who runs a busy fire company, who runs, you know, a structure fire a day, and I got to learn how to do that. The administrative stuff, it has its challenges, obviously, but, you know, we're not going to kill anyone by the paper I print off or by the Google Drive I'm working on. We're going to kill someone on this fire scene. So, you know, it has to be an equal part of getting better administratively, but more so I have to hone my skills. And my guys challenged me this next year. I let my guys review me after 6 months. Every firefighter. They were given a review. It's like, listen, be as honest as possible. If you're afraid, don't put your name on it. Do whatever you got to do to make it anonymous. But I got to get better. And, you know, not to air my own dirty laundry, but my guys said, hey, we want to see you out on the training ground, Chief. And I was like, you know what, you're right. It's been 6 months. It's probably time for me to get out there with you guys. I spent my first 6 months trying to figure out how to do this job. So a lot of my focus was trying to take care of them and learn how to be a battalion chief. Well, now I got to get out there and learn how to be their mentor too. And so taking part in that training, you hit that on the head beautifully. You know, the chief's got to be out there. And there's that old adage, oh, the chief's out here, he's just going to point out something that's wrong. I think the chief needs to be out there, and occasionally it's okay for him to mess up. But the ownership has to come with, hey, let this younger guy show me how to do this. We just did flowing and moving yesterday. And when I came on, you didn't really flow and move. Nobody taught that until Aaron Fields. Aaron Fields started teaching it. You know, so these younger guys, that's what they're doing now. Well, us older guys, we got to learn the techniques. So you have to be humble enough to say, this isn't something I learned, so teach me.
I love it. I'm taking a dramatic pause for a second because what you just said matters, right? And I think that the one thing that's missing is guys, as they promote, and I'm talking about career volunteer, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As you move up the ranks, you can't forget you're still a fireman.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I would
right.
On my podcast, I always try and shout people out. But you know, one of my favorite companies doing is you know, blue collar fireman.
Yeah.
And that's not just his T-shirt company. That is an actual thing. This job is blue collar. Even though as a chief, I got gold and my collar might be white sometimes, but this job is a blue collar job. And you hit it on the head, whether you're a career or volunteer, this job is, you know, this was where they put the people they didn't want at other jobs. You know, the Irish, when they first came over, this was their job because it was dirty, grimy, and you could die. So we have to remember that ain't changed. You know, OSHA, NFPA, all of that, they can put out the good stuff and the stuff that's helpful, but at the end of the day, this job can kill you, this job's dirty, and this job's hard.
We need leaders to understand that. We need bosses, especially admin, like command staffs, right? It's not so much the company officer, even the battalion chiefs, they're still in the trenches. They're running the fires, at least at the get. Right, they're certainly involved and you know, eating dinner typically at the same table as the guys, but then you have your administration and command staff, and sometimes the disconnection shows very quickly. And I had this great conversation with a chief out of Maryland, and I said, you know, we need great people to have a seat at the table. Right? We need good firemen to promote, because when they promote, they then will get a seat at the table to be heard. It's nice to be the senior fireman. You'll have influence within your firehouse. You'll have influence within the officers, the line officers that understand your background and where you come from. But you don't have a seat at the big table downtown. And so that's why we need some of these rock star firefighters that are really, that have an unbelievable knack for it, to be at that table, because that is how we can try to keep our command staff and administrations in line with what the true values are from the guys that are riding the back step.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. And one thing we do a really good job at, you talk to him, Andy, the co-owner of Axe Head Threads.
Yeah, of course.
He is a fantastic fireman, best one I've ever worked with in my entire life. And he has leadership qualities well beyond mine. And someday, I've always told him, like, I actually denied a day off because I wanted him to take an officer class. I was like, I'm not going to give you that day off until you take this officer class, because he has information, and he is the type of informal leader right now that will transcend our agency. But he's like, dude, I got the best seat in the house. I ride backwards on an engine. Why do I want to promote? And so, one of those things is that struggle of finding the firefighters that want to promote, but are also those good informal leaders. And, our agency has done a really, really good job of putting these younger firefighters, once they get in our door, they get past their probationary time. I was the department PIO here for a little bit, and we had this younger generation, and I was shooting a video, and he was like, why don't you do that in 4K? And I was like, what the hell's 4K? And, it was that time I texted the chief, and I was like, we got to put these younger guys in this PIO role. They know more than us. So we've done a really good job of getting these younger guys involved in these little roles, which gives them a seat at that table. And what it also does is recruiting and retention. This guy's not going to want to leave if he feels like he's running the social media and has a say in the direction of the department.
I love that. I think that is where good leadership really expands, is when you can see the values that your people bring and you put them into positions that will allow them to flourish.
Absolutely.
And that is a leader, that is a boss, that is someone that is dialed into their people, that recognize their skill sets, and then they say, man, you are so good at this, I'd love to support you in this role. Do you think you could take this on for us? I think you'd bring a lot to the table. And then you give them that support they need so that they feel good about it, man. Because the one thing I do know is people need validation. They do. I don't care if you're young or old. A pat on the back, an attaboy goes a very long way, and especially more so, I think, for the younger generation. Listen, I have kids. I got 30, 28, 17, and 16. I have to manage my children differently from each other. They're all very different, and so you have to understand that, and that goes back to what we were saying before. Whether you got blood in the firehouse or not, it's still our family, so you got to go all in to know how to handle each individual to get the most out of them.
Well, and that's like I said, I'm gonna pat my administration on the back. They are fully supportive of the direction the department is moving, and they know that this younger generation, we're getting younger. We just hired 18-year-olds a couple of years ago. They know that this younger generation, they're strong in this area. Maybe they're not, maybe they don't have the experience everybody else does, but they can run the social media. They can take the videos. We've put our younger guys in our hiring processes. They've built our flyers and the QR codes. None of us old guys can do that. I wouldn't even know where to start to get a QR code. Like Ryan does all that stuff for the podcast, but they know how. So, our administration's done a fantastic job of putting these kids in positions where they feel like they have that seat at the table.
Has it always been like that?
No, not really. My fire chief right now, he is he was my first boss when I came on. Younger guy, I think he's 45.
Nice.
So he's young to be a fire chief, but his whole culture is recruiting and retention. So he has recognized that if it's in Indiana, it's kind of gotten to be a cutthroat business. Everyone's searching for that next paycheck. And instead of, guys with tattoos of their fire department on them, that's being replaced by, well, this place pays more. We've tried to focus on, you want to be a part of building something special, stay here. You can go make more money elsewhere, but you can actually be a part of building something here. And this younger generation, they want that ownership. When they're sitting in the corner office in 20 years and I come in to have a cup of coffee, they're going to be the ones that have helped build this from the start, and that's why they stayed here.
Experience matters more than ever. And I don't mean experience on the fire ground. I'm talking about the experience for individuals. I know, like, my oldest, my 30-year-old, Michael, money's important to him. Don't get me wrong. Money's important. But I think what's equally as important these days is the experience. They'd rather travel than, save, right, in a way. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like they live paycheck to paycheck. But what I'm saying is experience matters to them. They'd rather go spend the day learning and doing something than, just, throw darts. I'm just saying, like, the experience matters to them, and it does translate to the firehouse. And when we have these younger guys coming in, the culture matters to them. The experience. It's not just a paycheck. It's not. Yeah. There's more to it. And I got taken to task on this a while back when I talked about this a little bit. And guys are like, bullshit. Nobody cares about a department. It's all about money. Guys are jumping ship to go wherever they can. And I'm like, nope. There are fire departments out there that I know firsthand, and I can name them, that don't pay the most, and nobody's leaving. And the reason why they're not leaving is they have a good culture, they have a fire culture, they let their people be firemen, and there's a whole slew of other things why people want to stay there. That exists, and you need to build that.
You have to, like, I could ask 5 of our young guys. I could walk out of this office right now and ask 5 of the young guys if they have a 457 here, and they'd be like, I didn't even know we offered that. So they're not searching for the benefits. They're not searching for that. You hit it on the head. They want to be firemen. They want to come in here. They want to fight fire. They want to hang out with their buddies. They want to be a part of the fire service culture. Money is important. Obviously, it's how people pay their bills. But if they're a part of building something, I think that this generation isn't much different from my dad's generation or the one before that. They just require a little bit more information. Why should I care about the culture? Well, you should care about it because we were founded in 1896. Like, I mean, how do we take the time to teach these kids about it? And, I was blessed with the opportunity 10 years ago. I said, we don't teach them fire service history. We don't teach them about these major incidents. We don't teach them about the Our Lady of Angels fire. So you get these kids bitching about, you get these kids and these guys bitching about doing fire drills. We don't teach them why we do the fire drills. We don't teach them about the panic hardware. We don't teach them about major incidents that impacted things. We do technical rescue out here. None of that shit happens without Oklahoma City happening. So we don't take the time to teach them that, and we expect them to do it and not ask why. But
I think a big part of that twofold, right? One is we take for granted that they already know, right? We do. Yeah. We take things for granted today more than ever because we just assume you should know. You should know. So we take for granted that we're not going to take another step back to teach. The other part, though, Chief, and I think this is a bigger issue, is it takes work. Again, it takes work. The people have to put the time in to educate. And where we used to take for granted that people knew how to run a lawnmower, run a chainsaw, can't do that anymore. We have to now teach the steps leading up to being able to pull a cord on a combustion engine and understand how to use a choke, right? Like, if kids haven't done that before, if they have never cut a lawn, ran a small combustion engine, how can we expect them to know on the training grounds how to start a chainsaw? We just take that for granted. Me, growing up, we all knew how to run combustion engines. What we did fuel mix. We did all that. But today, we have to work harder to educate, and it's not their fault.
No.
It's just the upbringing they've had. Things have changed. Technology changes. Focus changes. And if we don't recognize that and play to that, that is where we get in trouble.
Yeah, so I always use this, and not to tell too many stories, but we always make our recruits write a paper about a fireman that died on 9/11.
Yes.
And this was born out of the fact that, you and I were alive for 9/11. We saw it. We saw the aftermath. We've heard all the names. We have learned about them. But now we're in a situation where these kids weren't alive. So now I sit them down and you have to go through NIMS training. And they're like, when am I ever going to use this stuff? And it's like, well, let me tell you why we do this. We do this because on 9/11, we didn't have common terminology. So is it nerdy? Yes. Is it, but that extra step of saying, hey, I want you to research what 9/11 was and pick a guy, one of the 343, and write a biography about them. So now we're investing these young kids in not only learning about these brave heroes that died, but why do we do NIMS and why do we have this terminology? We have it because of 9/11. That's where it was born from. And that's easier to sell. That's easier to tell these kids, hey, you want to be a part of something this great if you explain why.
Yeah. Yeah, you create an environment that matters, right?
Yeah, I have a whole folder of spreadsheets. Some of them are laminated of biographies. If I ever can sit down, I'll actually put together something and not sell it. But every recruit class that's ever came through here has had to write a biography of a 9/11 guy, and that is them investing in the fire service history.
Yeah, and when you think about that and what that does for the individual, for that kid that's coming in, what you do with something like that, that's powerful, man. That's really powerful. Good for you guys. I do love the fact that you guys really have taken a proactive stance to understand that the culture does matter, and it's listen, we might not be giving you the most money, but I promise you stay here, it's a good environment. People are starving for that, man. They really are.
Yeah, and I gotta pat our administration on the back. Our deputy chief, he's a third generation fireman. Like he is a fireman. He might be my boss, and he might have to come up with policies and bring down the hammer, but this means as much to him. Our fire chief, he'll get out, and on the last day of recruit school, he does a run with them. They're taking the time to invest in these young kids, and when you see the chiefs out there, and my old battalion chief James, he's loading 5-inch. When they see the chiefs doing that, man, they're like, not only do I want to be that guy someday, I want to be exactly like that guy someday.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to tell a story. I'll probably get in trouble for it, but I'm going to tell a story. Not too long ago, we had a car fire and up on the highway, and we're packing up the bumper line afterwards, and the chief jumped in. Chief of department jumped in to help pack it. And so I'm like kneeling down in front of the bumper, feeding it, and he's feeding it to me. I'm packing it, doing this accordion, and then we do 100 accordion and then 50 in a donut with the nozzle. So you grab the donut and the nozzle, you throw the
exactly
2 loops.
What we do.
Exactly, right?
Yep.
So a lot of people have the same setup. So it's all the time. It's a pain in the ass to pack, like the accordion back and forth. It's a pain in the ass. Sure. So the chief's in there. So when I'm done, I walk away from it, and I lean over to one of the younger guys that are standing there, who's standing off to the side, and I said to him, hey, man, next time, if you see the chief lending a hand, I said, just hop in there and just say, hey, chief, no worries, brother, I got this, right? Like, and as much as the chief wants to pack that line, we know he does. He wants to get involved. He's still a fireman, right? And our chief certainly is. But it was kind of like an educational thing to tell the younger kid that it's okay that the chief wants to, but at least make an effort to take over that position for him, right?
Yeah. So my guys
hold on
to let me do any of that. So,
hold on.
Go ahead.
So
it's all you, brother.
He turns around, looks at me, and goes, I was just packing hose over there. Why do you always have to make it known that we're not doing work? You always think that we're not working. And all of a sudden it became this like, and I speak, like I have no problem talking. Yeah. And I'm like, I stood there speechless, and I'm like, thought I was giving like a helpful nugget. Maybe he didn't know that. He was younger. And so it was kind of like, hey man, like I'm not picking on you. I'm not attacking you. Yeah. I'm not telling you you're doing it wrong. That's not what this is. What this is to say, hey, maybe you didn't recognize that, or maybe you didn't see him. So next time be a little more considerate or conscious of it, right? But it was a tip.
Yeah.
It was a fucking tip.
Yeah.
And I got my ass ripped by a young kid because he was so bent out of shape that I said something to him. And I stood there dumbfounded, and then I was like, you know what, man? I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. And I just turned around and walked away. And I was like, holy shit. But you know what I said? I said to everybody else on my engine when we got back in the rig, I said, hey guys, next time the chief's packing, I said the same thing to those guys.
Yeah.
It was a helpful, it was something that come with experience I should share. And instead of it being received as like, hey, thanks Jay for the nugget. Thanks for pointing that out. I got my ass I hurt his feelings, and it wasn't even a personal attack. So this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember is like, yeah, he might have got upset, but you had an opportunity to teach 3 other guys.
Right.
You know, so I take the good with the bad.
100%.
3 guys heard your message. Three firefighters heard your message, and they'll do that from now on. So you listen. When I was teaching, when I was a fire instructor, I would always tell people, you know, I will put forth the same effort you do. And what that means is if 90% of the people are in, I'm going to focus on those 90%. That other one, listen, you don't give me the same effort, I'm not going to put the same effort into you. So, you know, you've heard it, man. That's the right direction. I before I rudely interrupted you.
No, you're good. No, listen. You're good.
What I was going to say is my guys don't let me do a damn thing at this firehouse.
Right.
And it's cool. It's fun. But the other night, they tried to take the mop out of my hand, and I was like, I want a fucking mop. And I got done, and I was like...
There's that, too. Right.
I was like, guys, that was so satisfying. You guys, you know how satisfying it is to see what was dry become wet, and what was dirty become clean, and we had a good joke about it, but they're really good about that. They don't let us Chiefs do shit. You have to sneak up to try and do something, which is a good thing, but that's the hardest thing, is taking that step back from being in the companies.
But you created a culture in which that's what the norm is. And so then your people coming in see that, and then it's infectious, right? And that's what we need. And, like, older guys have the obligation to teach. The younger guys have to be willing to listen.
Yeah.
And they have to be willing to understand that a lot of times through teaching, put your feelings aside. This is not personal.
Yeah.
Like, let me help you. Let me share something with you. I had to learn this myself. I'm trying to make it easier for you. Maybe that's part of the problem, because I do think adversity matters. And I think that sometimes guys have to learn for themselves. And so, you know, we always want to make things easier for that next generation. I talk about that in my Bridge and Gap program. It's like, it's our own fault. We've created the next generation. Every generation before creates the next generation, and we always try to make it easier for the next generation. The problem is, though, we need people to get punched in the face, and we need people to fall down and scrape their knees, and we need our children to fall off their bicycles or get hurt on the playground or get in a fist fight in the sandbox. We need that to happen, because that teaches life lessons. And when we take that out of the equation, especially on the fire ground, where we don't let our people work enough to make mistakes, we are creating a volatile situation.
Well, and you know as well as I do, you mentioned FDTN earlier. They do a fantastic company officer class. It's not all strategy and tactics. Like, it teaches you how to be a company officer during your tour. And man, I thought I was the best lieutenant that we ever had. I was so high on myself. I'd been a lieutenant for a while.
I love that.
They mandated all of us to go. The chief said, all of you officers are going to this class. And for 5 days, Jim McCormick and his staff out there kicked the living shit out of me and showed me how good of an officer I wasn't. And I'll tell you, after day one, I was like, my department is stupid. They should have never promoted me. I'm an idiot. I did this wrong. I did that wrong. But one thing that these kids will learn is like, yeah, you can have 18 years on, but when you promote, you're basically starting over. Now you're gonna make mistakes in a leadership role, and then, you know, when you get promoted to captain, I'm still making mistakes. You know, I was house captain over the maintenance of the firehouse. I don't know how an AC works. I know how to call the guy to get him out here to get the AC to work. And now that I'm a battalion chief, like, I messed something up on the schedule the other day, or a time card issue. So you have to realize that your entire career, you're going to learn.
Yeah.
Now, your entire career, you have to be receptive to learn. Even your, you know, Jim McCormick's and Ray McCormick, that's a great example. Frank Lieb, all those guys, they're still on the teaching circuit, but they're also sitting there while other people are teaching. Now, if you got these giants in the fire service that are still taking classes, that should tell you something. Guys that are running 8 fires a day are still taking classes.
Repeat, this is a test.
So I think that's important.
This is a test.
That's important for people to understand that when you get in the fire service, you're a lifelong learner, and you're a lifelong mistake maker.
All day long, man. Listen, I'll never admit it in front of my wife and children, but I make mistakes every single day. You know what I mean? But
I tend to make more at home.
Right? Yeah, well, of course I do too, but I've never been wrong, right? But I mean, but there's so much to that. And I'll be honest with you, I'm very much the same way. Like the fact that you could turn around and recognize that you could have done better or you should be better. I mean, I had the same stuff. And you know, when I was younger, man, my shit didn't stink, bro. I had every single answer. I knew everything about everything. You couldn't tell me differently. Today, totally different person than I was then.
Yeah, and that goes deeper than just like you mentioned experience earlier and outside of the firehouse. You know, our experiences raising kids are gonna be how these younger kids, when they start families, they're gonna be like, man, I saw Jeremy be a dad. His kid got on, and I seen Tony interact with his kids. So you know, we're role models too outside of the fire service. How are they going to start families if we're not providing a good idea of what the fire family looks like?
In 6 years, all the content we've put out, all the projects we work on, the travel we do, the advertising, the marketing, the media, the podcast, everything we do. The second I started talking about my daughter, I've gotten more information back from people on that and how that resonated with you. Even said it this morning when we started talking, like you knew about it.
Yeah. No.
And like, it's going to be fun, but she's going to be a guest on my podcast very soon.
Oh, that'll be cool. You know, you as a dad, I only have a boy, so I don't know what it's like to have a girl, but I can tell you, you're like, man, I don't want most people don't want their daughter, their baby girl, to get involved in the fire service. And I always tell I always tell my wife that, you know, I wrote an article for Next Rung one time, and I said it is so odd to me how we can love a job that breaks our heart. So as much as I want this kid of mine to get to be a part of this fraternity and to get to be a part of one of the best things that's ever happened to me, the thought of him having to see carnage and destruction, that breaks my heart. So when I saw your post about your daughter, man, I know how the people from Jersey are built. The Garden State is built different when it comes to the fire service. It's especially exciting to see young women get involved, man. Like,
do you want your son to get involved in the fire department?
Man, my son he's very smart. He's always playing with a Rubik's Cube, taking something apart, putting it back together. So part of me can see him being, you know, a valuable firefighter. Yeah. But I mean,
here we go. Yep.
Truth be told, a lot of the mental struggles I've experienced in my career, and you know, I've worked with Next Rung pretty closely, and you know, how can you love a job that breaks your heart? It boils down to it all the time. Like I love coming to work, but I also love my citizens, and I feel when they die, when someone in this township dies. You know, it takes a little piece of me with it. So do I want my kid to experience that? No, but man, all of his uncles, the guys he called James, Andy, those guys that are his uncles, like, I want him to experience that. He doesn't have any other siblings. So I go back and forth. I would love here at our department, the only people that can take your badge when you retire are direct family. I'd love to give my badge number to my kid or my nephew or anybody, but there is also that little part of you that never wants them to have to see the things you've seen.
I get that, right? We always want to shield them, protect them from that. I'm curious why more next generations from bloodlines are not going into the fire service. I mean, there are certainly a lot of family lineage and legacy that's happening, and legacy candidates coming through career volunteer departments. But I look at like my volunteer department at home. Most guys, their kids did not join. And I wonder why. And this is something that I want to explore further because, like, I look at it and I go, it's done so much for me. Like, it is my lifestyle. It's who I am. It's the people I run with. It's what I talk about. It's what excites me. It's all of that. Why wouldn't I want that for my child? But then I looked at my daughter Lily when she decided to join, 16, just a junior firefighter. She's not going to do it as a career. I can almost guarantee you that. Maybe she will, but I doubt it. She's super smart, like you said, you know, like your son. And, like, she wants to be a corporate lawyer, and she's going to go to a great 4-year college. She's going to get an incredible education. and she's going to do very, very well in life, and I'm very happy for her, and and so on. But my point is if the fire service has been so good for all of us, because we love it. I mean, you have a podcast, for God's sakes, right? Like, think about it. Yeah. Why don't we want our children to go into it? And it's just one of those things.
You had my good friend Ray Trimmer and his dad on. And that Ray is he is 1,000,000% about the fire service. And I had a chance to have some drinks with his old man, and that apple didn't fall too far from that tree.
100%.
But hearing Ray talk about, like, I never really wanted to do it, and you have to dive deeper into, is it what it's doing to our families?
That's right.
We're all into the fire service. My wife will tell you she is right, wrong, or indifferent. She's taken a back seat to the fire service several times. She said that she's told me before, I'm more in love with the fire service than I am her. And, that hurts to hear. So, I think part of that might be that the kids have had to sacrifice so much, and they have a little resentment to it. But the moment they come right out, they're like, I get it. Yeah. My kid stayed the night here. I'm blessed. I couldn't find someone to watch him. My kid stayed the night here, and he told me it was the greatest night of my life, Dad. So
my daughter the other night, man, it was her and I in the engine. We were just going across town for something, and she was riding in the front seat. I was driving, and it was just two of us because the other engine went out before us. It was just the two of us. And on the way back, she's got her arm like on the windowsill, and she just looks over at me, and she's like, Dad, this is so cathartic. She's like, riding in a fire truck is so different than a car. And I said, it's the responsibility and weight that you carry when you sit within the doors of this truck. Yeah. And I said, and then I said to her, compound that being you. I said, you're a beautiful woman who, when you were sitting at a red light and a little kid looks out that car and looks up at you sitting in the back seat of this fire engine with your long ponytail, I go, that's going to resonate very differently with that kid sitting in that car than it would just a guy. A guy, they look at and they go, oh, wow, fireman. Yeah. All of a sudden, they look up and they see this beautiful young woman sitting there. That is a whole different, just idea of what the fire service can be. And she recognizes that, and she said there's an incredible weight and responsibility that comes with that. And so I'm a lucky guy. I got amazing kids. She's amazing. And I to be honest, it was a struggle at the very get, but man, I am so far past that. I love having her there. I love the fact that she understands it. I love the fact that she's really diving into it. It's awesome, bro. It is so awesome.
And two things before we jump out of this one. Like, your daughter is paving the way for those next little girls. That little girl
100%.
That maybe some kid in class said, nah, you can't be a firefighter.
Got that right.
Firefighters are men. Nah, well, I seen one riding in the back of this engine. She had soot on her hands or whatever. So, I always tell these little girls, you can be anything you put your mind to. Like, you want to be a firefighter, guess what? This fire service is changing, and I have found several situations where having a girl on my crew was way more beneficial than guys. They're more compassionate by nature. So
I can understand that.
I've been blessed to work with great females. We just promoted our first female officer, and she is fantastic. She probably works circles around half of us dudes. The other thing is, I was a union president for a while, so you got to tell your daughter if she wants a connection with the fire service. I can tell you this. Kurt Verone, he's going to tell you this. Firefighters, as we get bigger, as this world gets crazier, we're going to need good lawyers. I've worked closely with lawyers in the union for several years, so there's always that connection, and
I love that.
It's personal to her too, so that's cool.
I look at the core values of what the fire service can do for individuals. And when I look at raising a child and bringing your daughter into something like this, for me, I feel so certain that the foundation that she's going to get from what we do and who we are is going to pay dividends when she's older. Yeah. And I'm excited for that. Well, you know what I'm saying?
You've taught her sacrifice. My heart goes out to every volunteer firefighter in this country. I say I'm a union president. I have always been a major supporter of the volunteer fire service because, I've worked with paid guys that get pissed off when the tones go off at 2 o'clock at night. Now you got volunteers that do that shit for free, and they love it. They dig it. And I think what that comes with is sacrifice. You're teaching your kid to put their self after others. And That's transitional. Whether she stays in this or not, like she'll know what it's like
100%.
to serve others, and that's what we're put on this earth to do. Jesus Christ taught us that.
I love that.
So,
that's good, brother.
yeah.
That's good. So listen, time's ticking by quick, and that's what happens on these things. So I want to talk about the Kitchen Table podcast real quick.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about just, I don't know, the process for you. What does it do for you? What is, to be able to put your thoughts and ideas out there means you got to accept responsibility for who you are, right?
Yeah.
But on top of that, you then have the responsibility of your guests that come on and protecting the integrity of the fire service and their stories and so on. So it is a very large, massive amount of things that you have to be concerned about and worry about when you do a podcast. And so for you, how's the process been? What's it like for you?
So being a part of the Kitchen Table podcast it's been transformational. Ryan and me grew up together. We went through fire school together. He was a good student. I was a shithead. I was a terrible, terrible kid. Ryan was a good kid. So we get to tell those stories about coming up together and how in Fire 1 and 2 class, Ryan was always good, and I was always the kid that had to write the definition of fire 50 times because I said something about the teacher's daughter.
I love it.
So, the connection, Ryan and me both grew up enjoying watching wrestling. So we have the KTP logo, which is built after a wrestling logo. So
I thought so. I know,
Yeah,
dude. Absolutely.
We have so many. Ryan and I are so connected. So to be able to be on the podcast with Ryan, we ended up bringing Dale on. Dale's a fire service instructor here in Indiana, and he's our father. He's our old dad. So when Ryan and I start talking shit, Dale is there to reel us in. So we have a good crew. But the process for me is being able to tell stories of Indiana. People come here for FDIC, and that's what they know, the fire service in Indiana. But man, I had an opportunity to have Mike Spalding on. He was a lieutenant, burned pretty badly at the athletic club fire where Mike Tyson's rape trial was happening in '92. And I was 7 years old. I can remember the firefighters dying. Now I'm able to hear the conversation from the guy who was there, and we also get an opportunity to pay tribute. Every episode, we read how many firefighters died. If you are not receiving line of duty death notifications, get on the fallen firefighters, sign up for the secret list, get that, because that's how you learn. But it's also how you pay tribute, and that's one of the important things we do on each episode is we read who died, and right after those two Jersey firefighters died in the shipyard, we did a moment of silence for them. So it's about honoring and telling the stories. You'll hear me say in the podcast, what good's having a podcast if you can't have your friends on? So
That's right.
some of them are my
That's
friends.
right.
My fire chief. He
Yeah.
has the KTP shirt, the hat. He was a guest. I don't want to have a podcast if I can't have my friends on. Now, I also have people that I look up to that I want to have on. We got Dakota Meyer coming up at some point, Medal of
Awesome.
Honor winner.
Repeat, this is a test.
That's so I want to tell the stories of American heroes, but also I want to pay tribute. In that episode, we'll pay tribute to the guys that had fallen during his mission. So. That it is a tough balance telling that story, being respectful. Like when Chief Spalding was on, that was an emotional fire scene. So I'm
Yes.
asking him to talk about the worst night of his life. So I gotta do that justice. I gotta make sure that the younger firefighters are getting something from it. And one of the great things about his episode was we teach firefighters all the time to push that orange button. He actually burned his hand doing it on his radio. So what came from that incident, we were able to tell him, man, you've taught Central Indiana firefighters all over. All these kids know that because of your sacrifice. So as tough as it was to tell, I had to approach it with I want people to learn from this too, because these are giants of the fire service.
Yeah. I love that. What has it done for you, though, personally? Does it hold you more accountable? Does it make you more conscious of your surroundings? Does it make you, because you're putting yourself out there. When you put yourself out there like you are, there's a lot of people can throw stones, man. So you got to accept responsibility for who you are, but it also holds you accountable, no?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely does. The good thing about being in the fire podcast realm is there's a guy named Jeremy from National Fire Radio. People tend to know more Like I said, man, we have the guys that have been doing this for 5-6 years, hundreds of episodes. I
love it.
I've watched yours. I've studied yours. I've studied others. Like I see how they approach things, and I have no doubt that it comes with a risk, but it's also probably made you a better firefighter. It's made you more well-connected. You're networking. So those risks balanced with the fact that, man, I get to sit and have a conversation with you for an hour and a half. So,
bro, I can tell you this. It has made me just a better person, not just firefighter, right? Not just my Rolodex of contacts and people I've gotten to meet and know and hear their stories and bounce things off of them and guidance and mentorship. It's all of that. It's made me better as a person.
That's cool.
I've accepted responsibility for who I am, how I want to conduct myself, how I carry myself. I say it all the time, with maturity comes clarity. I believe that in my world, that as I've come to grow up and accept what I do and who I am, I have to, in order to accept that, there's accountability, and then that comes through the rest of everything else that I do in my life. And so I always say, who we are in the firehouse needs to be who we are outside of the firehouse. We can't live a double life.
Yeah.
And so the podcast for me certainly has held me more accountable than ever.
Well, and you know this. Anybody who wasn't at FDIC, I watched you give the jersey off your back for next run. So I think what you have to look back on is when we're long gone, the only thing left will be stories. Podcasts are stories.
That's right. That's right.
So we'll have the time that we raised money for mental health, and you did it by taking your jersey off. So,
my one of one, bro. That was supposed to hang from the rafters at NFR headquarters, and I sold it.
It was wild, man, and
cool.
That's what I look at is
doing the right thing.
Your contribution to the fire service is greater because you started National Fire Radio,
I appreciate that, pal.
That's what I'm after. I don't have any desire to make any money on this podcast. I just want someday my kid to go, man, my dad was a part of teaching people. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Tony Bratcher, thank you, brother. Thank you for joining me today on the podcast, man. It was a great conversation. I'm glad that, we crossed at FDIC. I can't even begin to thank you for this awesome lid that I got.
Absolutely.
Bro, it's awesome. And whatever I can do to return the favor, I gotta do something for you for sure. But I appreciate the lid, and more so, I appreciate your time today and just sharing a little bit about yourself and your story. I wish you and the guys the best of luck and success with the podcast, Kitchen Table Podcast. Where can they find you, Tony? How do they listen to you?
So we're on Apple and Spotify under the Kitchen Table Podcast.
Love it.
YouTube. We're working through some issues. We don't have the nice. I can't look at you yet, but we got a camera. We're trying to go a little bit bigger, but let me just say something real quick. You keep it up, man, because these people are watching these apparatus videos and the innovations and all that, and man, you're changing the fire service. So whatever I can do to help you, whether it's give you a fresh hat or we'll see each other at FDIC, and I consider you friend, and you're in that state of Jersey that I hold so near and dear to my heart.
Well, when you get out this way, you let me know, I'd love to show you around a little bit, we'll have some fun.
Me and the Axe Head guys will be in Long Branch coming up in September. So.
Oh, for the cigar. Do you know what the date is on that? By the way,
I don't think we have an exact date, but we're looking at going to a Phillies game, so I'm looking forward to that.
That's that South Jersey stuff, man. Anything south of where I live is Pennsylvania in my world. You know what I mean?
Before I met all you guys, the only experience I had with Jersey was I was a huge Sopranos fan. And
there you go.
Now, man, Jersey's. I would move there if I could. That's how.
No, we're all trying to get out of here.
That's how much I love the brothers in Jersey. So
we're gonna take the Jersey and spread it around the country. No, don't move here. We're moving to you. I promise, because nobody wants to live here anymore.
I appreciate you, brother, and thank you, man. And until I see you again, you stay safe and keep.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Tony from the Kitchen Table Podcast. Thank you, brother, for joining me today. Don't go anywhere. Stay right there. I'm just going to sign off the podcast, and then I'll come right back to you, okay?
Yeah.
Guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. I say it at the end of every single episode. Take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse, and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.